For today's video, I'm going to talk about the four main types of clay. So when we say the word clay, it can mean lots of different things, but there are some categories or some types of clay that we might choose to work with, and it really depends on what you're going to use it for to kind of help you decide which type of clay you might want to work with. So I'm going to go through the four types, tell you what's unique about each one of them and some of the details about each one of them, and then especially focus in on the one that we're going to be using for all of our projects in Ceramics 1. The first clay that I want to talk about is earthenware. So earthenware, things you should know about earthenware. It is low temperature. That means that we normally put it in the kiln and take it up to temperatures less than 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the kind of clay that you would find probably close to the surface, which means if you went outside, maybe near a stream or a construction site, you might find some clay that's near the surface, and that's probably what you would be finding, which would be earthenware clay. We don't use earthenware clay here at Warsaw High School for our projects, but it is a type of clay that some people use. When it's fired, it's just not as strong and durable as some of the others, and so this is a really good clay for making something like a flower pot that you might put plants in, and you've probably seen the kind of classic terracotta colored flower pots. But anyway, that's earthenware. We aren't going to be using earthenware in here, but I wanted you to be aware that it's a very porous type of clay, and it is low temperature or low fired, meaning it's under 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The second type of clay that I want you to know about is stoneware. You're going to get really familiar with stoneware because it's the clay we use for every project here at Warsaw High School. Stoneware is a medium to high fire clay, which means it's going to be definitely above 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And things about stoneware, it's very strong, it's very durable, it's great for dishes, it holds up really well, and it's also pretty easy to work with, so that makes it a good choice for us here at Warsaw. You might notice it usually has a bit of a sandy or gritty texture to it, and that is a sign that it's probably stoneware. It also tends to have more of a tan or brown or kind of earthy color to it along with that. So this is an example of stoneware, and that is the type of clay that we are going to be using and making all of our projects out of for Ceramics 1. Another type of clay is porcelain. So porcelain is also called china clay or just china. Porcelain, things about it, it is white, always white. It's very smooth. If I feel the surface here, it doesn't have that grittiness to it that the stoneware had to it, and it's very beautiful. It's really smooth as far as to work with too. There's some other things that make it more difficult to work with. It tends to shrink a lot more, and it tends to warp sometimes when it dries, so it is a little trickier to work with. Porcelain temperature is definitely high fire or high temperature, and so this is going to be a high temperature clay. I do have porcelain here in the room that my advanced students sometimes use when they've got a little more skill and know how to work with clay a little better. It's a good time to start trying porcelain. So this is another type that I do use here at Warsaw, but it's not the one that you'll be using in Ceramics 1. That's stoneware. But porcelain is another choice, especially if you want something that's smooth and white and really good for decorating on top of. That's porcelain. The last one I'm going to talk about is fire clay. So I'm showing you what's called a fire brick. This is what's inside the kiln, and you can see these little grooves here. There are wires that go in those grooves, and it's like a toaster. So the wires get hot, and that's what heats the pots up. So this is fire clay. It has to be able to handle really high temperatures because this is going to be something that we put the pots into the kiln, and so this has to be able to handle lots of heat. So this is fire clay. It's sometimes an ingredient in some other like specific kinds of clay, but it's something that we use especially for the things that go in the kiln, like the bricks and the shelves and some of the other pieces that go in the kiln. Anyway, that's fire clay. So again, 4 types of clay. We have earthenware, low temperature, porous. We don't use that here at Warsaw. We have stoneware, which is medium to high temperature, not very porous, makes great dishes and functional things that you might eat off of. Has that toasty color and a little grit to it. Then we have porcelain, which is white and smooth and high temperature, not porous at all, because porcelain is something they would use for sinks and toilets because it's completely waterproof. And then the last type of clay that I spoke about was fire clay, which is used for the bricks inside the kiln, and it can handle lots of very high temperatures.